The question was about sense of place, is that right? Evoking a sense of place in fiction, and how do I do that? Well, first of all, I think it's very important. So I do try very hard to visualize every scene very carefully so that I can see every part of a scene, and not only see it, but hear it and smell it and taste it. How I do that is firsthand experience is extremely important. This novel required years of research, and before, when we were talking about devices that could technically be dropped in the bathtub without electrocuting you, this goes for research too. Now, the internet is very useful. I really appreciate that a lot of newspapers have their archives online now, so that every day of this novel, from southern Mexico in 1929 to Washington, D.C. in 1950, because that's the span, for every day that I wrote about, I could find newspaper articles that told me what the important stories of the day are, and that was a very important part of the context. I also went to library, of course, a lot of paper libraries to read archived newspapers as well. But a very important part of the research for me involves walking away from the on-off switch and getting into the world. I spent a lot of time in Mexico, a lot of time in all of the places I wrote about, because you have to, in order to evoke that sense of place, you have to know a lot of things that you can't get from secondhand experience. I wanted to know, I walked around in these neighborhoods of Mexico City where these markets are, because I needed to know what it sounds like when it starts to rain, what it smells like when these girls are roasting corn over little fires, and just every detail is important, because literature is made of details. That's another part of the how. You have to understand that while you might begin with big ideas, you wind up with millions of tiny details. It's a fabric of details. That's what makes it work. Now you might say, yes, you could go to the Coyoacan neighborhood of Mexico City, but you can't go there in 1931. That was the trick. That was the trickiest part of this novel, and so I did have to combine firsthand, sort of real-time experience with what I could understand from historical research, and do a lot of interleaving. For example, a really important reference that I used on the shelf immediately behind my writing desk, I have dozens of books that are important to the particular book I'm writing at the time, and it's interesting to think about what those books were for this novel. One of them was a bound copy of about 20, probably more like 40 thin Sears catalogs of women's and men's clothing from different years. I mean, I had several of these bound books for like 1930 to 35, 35 to 40, and so forth. So you see what I mean? So I could page through and I could see what underwear people were wearing in 1931, because you have to know everything. What kind of hats? Mrs. Brown has this Carrie Brooke beret that she wears a lot, and the ad says, "Wear it many ways," and you can just picture her trying this beret on different ways, and that's her wardrobe right there. So what kind of shoes? So it's just all of the details. I can't even begin to tell you how interesting it all gets. Cookbooks. This guy is a cook. This is how he gets into a lot of interesting and important places. And so I made all of these dishes. He has some specialties that I cooked myself, so that I knew exactly what that's like. Some things I cooked over a fire, or in a more sort of rudimentary kind of cooking, which is what he would have done, not a really nice range like I have at home. So just Does that give you an idea? You have to be there. I'm not going to bother you with anything fake. Literature is invented, but it's not fake. It's real. And I know I'm not going to try to pull the wool over your eyes. I will only give you the best of what I can glean myself. And then, of course, all of it has to have meaning, but then that's another story.